Look at that. Hello. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the last big panel of PaizoCon this weekend. This is the creature feature. Woo! I would love to yell out and ask, how's PaizoCon going? How are you all feeling? And get a crowd response. It's a little harder to do nowadays with the whole PaizoCon online thing, but so we'll just skip that. And I'll go into introductions and say, hi, I'm Luis Loza. I'm the creative director on the Pathfinder Rules and Lores team. And I am joined by two other monsters. I am also a monster here. We'll do introductions here. I'll start with Jenny.
Hi, I am Jenny Jarzabski, Starfinder creative manager. Definitely a creature, a monster for sure.
And we have
Can't beat those
also
allegations.
and Josh.
Hi, my name is Joshua Birdsong. I'm a designer for the Rules and Lore team, and I am undoubtedly a monster. Let no one tell you otherwise.
Yes, absolutely. If you succeed your recall knowledge checks, you will learn all about our weaknesses and resistances, of which we have none. No weaknesses. We are unstoppable.
That's all right.
I'm sorry to say. So this panel is all about talking monsters. So we're going to talk a bit about our monster design process, what it takes to pick a cool monster and put them in our books and get them out there to you to fight them on your battlefield, on your battle mats, and your home games, and maybe, hopefully, succeed when that comes. So if you have any questions about the process of the whole thing, start getting those queued up. We're going to have a little Q&A section afterwards where we'll talk more about that. And then maybe we'll show off a cool set of monsters as well, so you can see some of the fruits of our labors on this. So I think we should start here. I'm going to kind of do a couple of questions for you, Jenny and Josh here, and also contribute. But start with Josh, since I started with Jenny earlier. Josh, what makes a good monster to you?
For me, I think a good monster is a monster that is interesting to fight. I like a monster that has unique weaknesses. I like a monster that has like various things it can do in combat that differentiate turn to turn. And I like a monster that really like kind of tells a story with what it's bringing to the table. Not necessarily like in its ability, maybe in its abilities, but also in like why is a monster here in the first place? What kind of environment does this monster like to be in? What might incentivize this monster to start attacking people? I think there's a lot of various aspects that can make a monster really interesting and bring a lot to a story.
What about you, Jenny?
Well, Josh said like everything good, but to add to it though, making sure that when you're telling those mechanics, like the abilities that the monster has, like making sure, of course, it's easy or it's fun to fight, but we want to make sure, obviously, that monsters have mechanics that support those story elements that Josh was talking about. And so I think the best monsters find ways to really not just tell you their story when you see their art, though obviously visuals are so important. We've got to have the cute monsters and the really creepy monsters, but it's just so important to feel like when you're fighting that monster that you're really experiencing the story of that monster and not just, oh cool, the GM is telling me what it looks like, but it's just doing generic attacks. So I'm kind of saying the same thing as Josh, but I mean it's just such a good answer.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I will yes and Josh here. All of that, all of what Jenny said. I think the other thing that comes to mind is if you can, eliciting like a strong emotion with a monster. You can't pull that off every single time, but I think having like a clear, like this is the kind of thing we're trying to go for. Like, hey, we want to freak players out with a gross ability or make them scared of something that is getting into their characters' brains, or even like a memorable, funny moment. Our goblins are full of levity and stuff. So giving them a goofy goblin song that you will not be able to forget because it got stuck in your head. Something like that. Something that sticks with you because it was a big emotional moment or a big just kind of an action movie trailer moment. One that would go in the trailer and you're like, what is that thing? What is that doing? And you never forget it. It is always a good thing to go for. But sometimes, you have a zombie that shows up, and the exciting thing is that you killed 100 zombies. No one zombie was particularly exciting, but you saved the entire town from the zombie horde that attack, right? So there are different ways to make your monsters memorable as well. So one of the things that we have to consider is just why we would even choose to make a monster in the first place. What monsters and creatures are we looking to even put into our books? Jenny, with the upcoming release of Starfinder 2nd Edition, there's been a lot of thinking about what monsters are going to end up in the Alien Core, and what kind of process did you and your team go through for deciding what our monsters are going to be, right? You know, there's some that you can probably grab from 1st edition, but honestly, that you have a kind of clean slate. So how did that go?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different things that we looked at when we were making monsters and making selections for the monsters. So of course, we started with 1st edition. We wanted to have some classic monsters, and there are some in there. We'll talk more about that later in this panel, but we also wanted to make sure that there was plenty of new monsters that would build our setting and just give more options to players who have also played Starfinder 1st edition and are looking for something new. And a lot of that had to do with looking at what we already had in the setting and looking at our types of adventures in that we hope that Starfinder games will be used for. So like we know that a lot of people like to run horror adventures or high tech or high fantasy and space adventures. And so we tried to determine what monsters fit into those types of adventures. And that was how we made a lot of our selections around what new monsters to come up with, what to bring back, what team ideas should make the cut this time, because there's just a lot of ideas. There's so many weird aliens that could be out there in space.
Definitely. Josh, you and I worked together with coming up with our own list of monster books. We had a kind of a different type of assignment. Rather than kind of starting from scratch, we had to do a grab bag, greatest hits kind of thing. So when we did have open slots, man, that was so long ago. I don't even remember how little or how much you contributed to the whole let's fill out this list thing. But you know, we've had opportunities for more monsters since then in other products. What do you kind of look toward to help you come up with brand new creature ideas, right? We obviously can grab a lot of older monsters and get those updated, but we always have space for new stuff. What are you looking for inspiration for your monsters?
Whenever I am tasked to come up with a new idea, I generally like to start by building myself some kind of box to work within. I find that creative ideas flow better when you have restrictions on what you can and can't do. Like thinking of anything is much harder than thinking of, say, a gothic horror monster. So I like to figure out like if there's anything that we might be missing in the setting, anything that like, oh, we have like lots of like level 1 through 3 horror monsters, but and level like 7 through 20 horror monsters. We're missing a 4 and a 5 there somewhere. I like to try to find gaps to fill in. And once I construct that some kind of box for me to work within, the ideas to start flowing out, and it makes it a lot easier for me to come up with fun and fantastical ideas.
There you go. Yeah, that was a thing we ran into a lot, is keeping a good mix of the various creature types, right? We don't want a book to just become a general monster book to just become full of fae or full of undead, right? If we wanted an undead book, we make a specific undead book and let people know that. But a generic core book, it's got to kind of have its full suite of
like
creatures.
Oops All Oozes.
Oops All Oozes, which I keep trying to.
That.
I would love to have that happen. I am like an
Oh,
ooze.
really?
I love oozes. It's so great. Oozes and
Oh.
constructs. If I had my save, just like let's make a book, all
I'm
monsters.
with you on the constructs, 100%, 100%.
So you're the
obviously
reason I always have to take additional lore oozes. Okay.
Yes, exactly. I'm not a fan of anyone who does precision damage, obviously. Anyway, and then the obvious conclusion is an ooze piloting a robot. So come on, you want that, right? Let the people.
It's a mech. All right, cool. I'm on board. Sold me. All right, cool.
There you go.
Here we go. Anyway, none of this is official, by the way.
None of it is official until
none
of it is official.
None of it is.
But you can definitely go post on our social media and our forums and everything, and bug Maya and everyone else.
Yeah. And then maybe it'll come to me.
Maybe it'll come to me. So Pathfinder, Starfinder, hey, they are hand in hand now. You're running pretty much the
Yay.
same exact rule set. Obviously, some tweaks. We care less about black holes. You care less about, I don't know, some of the other stuff that is not as cool when it's in space.
Like scrolls and like
Scrolls,
enchantments
yeah.
and stuff. Yeah. Which are
Who
cool,
cares?
but just not as cool in space.
Yeah. But that means we get to kind of standardize our process for creating monsters and stuff. So I think we should talk people through the process of like how we stat up our monsters,
Yeah.
right? Luckily, you can follow along, at least on the Pathfinder side, by opening up your GM core, right? Your Pathfinder GM core. There's a whole little section about doing that. And you can do a similar thing with your Starfinder GM core if you have one of those handy. I'd be very surprised if you did
In
at home,
September.
but you definitely could have one.
You might be a witch warper.
That could be. Or you're watching this 3 months from now or whatever. Hey, congrats.
Oh,
Hello.
that's true.
Hi, it's a beautiful
Hello,
May day.
time will progress anyway.
But in the GM core, we walk you through that process. We come up with a concept, right? That's where we start. And that could be something like an ooze that is inside a construct, right? We've had other creatures that, inhabit the bodies of other creatures, whether they're possessing them or they physically enter. So I'm sure we could figure something out. And then we start looking at numbers, right? And that is one way that we can do things. That is a definitely, I guess I would call that the bottom-up approach. You start with your numbers and then figure out what those are going to turn into. Or you could go with the top-down approach. You come up with abilities and a concept and go and then figure out what the nitty-gritty is going to be there. But from there, you kind of figure out what a good level is. Josh said level 3 or 4 for something, right? Hey, there's a gap there, right? And great, we can figure out what a level 4 creature is, what its stats are like. We kind of just follow the same process that we lay out in the GM core for the books, for our monsters. And if you go through this whole process and get to the end of it and feel satisfied and have a monster that works well for you, you've done it. You've done what we do for a living, right? Congratulations, you've made a monster. You didn't get paid for it, but you've done the process of doing so. We have a couple of other things that we check internally, right? We have to worry about little formatting things and all that stuff when we're writing them so they look good on the page. But that's the design process. We actually had told you, I've been telling you for years how to do this kind of thing. But with that all said, Pathfinder and Starfinder aren't exactly the same, right? There are some new things to consider. So, Jenny, when you and your team were looking at making monsters for the Alien Core, what were the things that you were running into that you decided, oh, this should work a little differently or doesn't need to be a thing we care about so much on the Starfinder side of things? How did your Starfinder monsters end up a little different than our Pathfinder monsters?
So in Starfinder, things like vision, like dark vision, comes online for a lot of people a lot earlier because we have a lot more playable ancestries that have it. Same with flight. So knowing that a lot of people might have access to flight because everyone has a gun and therefore a ranged strike versus maybe a few people in a Pathfinder game use ranged attacks, and most people are probably melee based other than casters, not necessarily, but that a lot of the time. But with that assumption, we know that creatures are going to be more like they are going to have ways to mitigate that and to counter that by also having ranged attacks. Not every single creature in Alien Core has ranged attack, but a lot of them do for obvious reasons, or they have ways to close distance quickly or ways to try to target a specific type of ranged type like PC. So those are things that we considered. We also thought about like space themes. There's rules like radiation and zero gravity and having no oxygen that affect both creatures and player characters. So those were things that some creatures have weaknesses to, but a lot of them or some of them have strengths and the ability to like spend some time in space. In Starfinder 1, we had some starship scale creatures, and we don't quite have those yet, though we're building to that because we're working on that tactical starship combat. But those are all things we thought about. These are just things that in Pathfinder you have to assume that at least at low levels, most player characters probably aren't flying around, though post remaster that's kind of easy. Like there's definitely more like access to flight a little bit earlier, but things like, I don't know, radiation isn't even a thing in Pathfinder, really. I mean, I think it is technically, but it's like I don't know how often that comes up, right? So
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I don't think we're running into starship combat either in Pathfinder very often. So
I don't think so. Yeah, you don't have to worry about creatures being if they can attack starships and player characters or not. So those are all the unique concerns we have.
For sure. Well, obviously we know how Pathfinder monsters work. So I think I'll ask Josh, ask you a slightly different question. But you have reviewed so many monsters. You've done a lot of passes on monsters, right? I think you have figured out kind of a good knack for and feel for what monsters do. What are some monster design pitfalls or like not quite obvious rules that you've run into along the way that you're like, oh hey, it turns out that because players can't fly early on, first couple levels, you probably don't want to give a flying enemy, a flying monster, a ranged attack that they can use repeatedly and just attack from a distance, right? And then, well, now the players can't do anything about it unless they all brought range weapons, right? And that's not a fun fight. So what are kind of some of those other little design quirks that come to mind with Pathfinder monsters that I'm sure sometimes apply to Starfinder monsters now too?
Yeah, absolutely. You are right. Like, my copy of the GM core is, you can tell which parts of the book are about building monsters because they are so much more worn than the other copies of the book. I can flip right to it every time now. But yeah, I think some common pitfalls are um, using the extreme stats too often is a really common one I see. The extreme ones are really meant to be for the most extreme situations, and especially when you're putting it on a defensive ability of some kind, because that can make it a really unfun experience for certain players of the party. Like if they have a very, very like extreme, let's say like a fortitude and a will save, then like all the occult casters are going to have a really hard time doing anything to that monster for the entire fight, and that's not going to be very fun. So spreading out defenses in such a way that there are key weaknesses, but also there are other that hitting the weakness isn't the absolutely only way to do anything to the monster, I think is a really important thing to look out for. The monster has to be fun to play against, and having everyone miss attacks every single turn is not fun.
Or lose actions every turn. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Lockdown abilities are something you really need to keep an eye on. You want to make sure that players can take actionable choices when fighting a monster. And restricting actions is sometimes can be a very scary moment, and that can be a good thing sometimes if you really want to add a sense of dread, but should be used very sparingly.
Definitely. I remember my turnover for the adamantine dragon got improved with your help, actually, Josh. It was very defensive from the get-go, and you decided to give it that ability where its armor you kind of crack its armor like you do a construct, and now it's, once you're halfway through the fight, it's a little easier. You've earned the ability to kind of push through and really get at the dragon. So you knew from the beginning how to make that better, which is great. So with Pathfinder and the Starfinder rule set now, one of the things we like to focus on are interesting abilities for our monsters, right? Something like burrowing through the ground and jumping out and trying to eat someone like the adamantine dragon does is something that isn't just a default option like tripping or grabbing or whatever. But we get a chance to really express interesting things for these monsters to do. We like to come up with what we call a good gameplay loop, right? Giving you an obvious like 2 or 3 rounds worth of, you can follow this line of, oh, here's all the things I can do on a turn and have interesting things to do. But with that, I think sometimes it's very easy to try to come up with lots and lots of cool abilities for a monster, right? I want it to do this and that. This ooze can shoot a laser with its construct arm, and then also it can split into another ooze, right? And then that ooze shoots out of the other arm, and then it's suddenly you have 8 different abilities that this ooze can use, and it's going to be defeated in 3 or 4 rounds. So how do you prioritize what the most important abilities are and trim down to just the coolest stuff? Jenny, what have you guys found on your side helps out for that?
Again, it goes back to like reviewing, okay, what was this character's story or this monster's story or its role in the game again? Like, is this is this an ooze that's like from the surface of a star and it's like tied to the cosmos, so it might have like graviton and photon powers, and then we could start pulling from like Solarian inspo, or is it like, a lab experiment that has like fused together all this biomass, and that might have very different types of abilities. So that's kind of where we'll start thinking is like, okay, so what like 1 or 2 to 3 abilities will really express that story. So with that gravitic ooze, I would say I'd want something, something that's like a photon and a graviton that cycles like a Solarian, or maybe I would just want to focus on graviton and give it like something to pull an enemy close or push enemies away, or maybe bunch enemies up for some kind of, area of effect attack, a la Overwatch Zarya, if anyone remembers those good old days. Yeah. So, and it kind of starts to like, okay. And so then if I keep going, I stop myself and say, okay, those are like the 2 most important things that are going to show the players in this encounter that this thing has gravity powers. It's connected to the star. It embodies those gravity powers, and it can like pull and push you around. And, what are you going to do about it? Any more than that just becomes bulky, like you were saying.
Sure. Josh, what went through your mind when you were trimming through, all the monsters that we had to look at in the last year or so, and making those really shine?
Yeah, it's never fun to cut abilities from things because you want everything to do everything all the time. But realistically, once you come up to a monster that you're planning on fighting in Pathfinder, it has about 18 more seconds to live.
It's true.
You can only do so much in that 18 seconds. And with that in mind, you really want to showcase the best that the creature has to offer in that much time. And if you throw in too many abilities, and sometimes they last more than 18 minutes, and sometimes you revisit the same monster. But if you have been finding a lot of skeletons lately, and then you fight another skeleton, and every time you fight skeletons, they're doing something completely different than the last skeleton. You're losing that reward for learning what the skeleton has done and learning how to fight against it the next time you fight it. So if they have 25 different abilities, and every time you fight it, it activates a different ability, then you won't know how to fight skeletons no matter how many times you fight skeletons. So having that smaller amount of abilities really allows us to optimize the fun of those abilities, while also giving players the opportunity to learn from previous fights and bring it on to the next time those monsters might show up in the future. And yeah.
It also makes for a grand opportunity to subvert the expectations and really surprise a player when you've fought the 20 skeletons and the 21st skeleton has an ability that you didn't expect at all because
Exactly.
it's the big boss skeleton or whatever. Cool. Well, I think people want to see monsters here soon, so I think we'll let them do that in just a bit. We'll ask one last question regarding design and all that. We all here at Paizo are voracious readers and media consumers and drawing from everywhere. We're drawing from folklore, we're drawing from TV and movies and all that stuff. And we're inspired by so much stuff. How do you handle like grabbing those inspirations and turning them into something that isn't just we copied this exact creature or this exact thing from something else, right? Like for me, the one thing that came to mind was grabbing one little aspect and then seeing what comes of that. The conspirator dragon comes to mind, where the idea of the animorphs transforming into their animals, they're shaping into animals, are always described very vividly with the sounds of bones crunching and things squishing and all that stuff. I'm like, that's super gross. What if that's what happens when someone changes shape using magic, right? And that's where the conspirator dragon's idea of like stuffing itself into a skin suit came from, and then from there came all these other fun, gross things. So, Josh, how do you distill this inspiration into something that's usable and won't get a suit?
Absolutely. Whenever I am working with something that I think I've seen before in media, I try more to evoke the feeling that had when consuming that media, more than the literal thing that is happening in the show or book that I'm pulling from. Like the big heroic moments for like spells, or like the scary reveal for monsters, and trying to distill what about that caused that effect, and try to figure that out more than a copy paste effect, more or less.
Sure. What about you, Jenny?
Yeah, again, that's pretty similar to my answer, but in addition to the feel, I would say also like evoking the vibe of it, like, because that's kind of feel related, but also just like the aesthetic, like the visuals for, you know, whether it's like a monster illustration or it's a whole adventure path that's getting like page treatments and art, you know, pages and pages of art. It's, you know, trying to look at those inspirations, but, you know, tell artists, describe what you want, what you're seeing in a way that you're not giving them an exact reference that they can copy accidentally or on purpose and then get, you know, everybody in trouble or do something we didn't intend to do. But yeah, it's no secret. We all take inspiration from our favorite media or just media we're interested in at the time. And we know that players and GMs are going to do the same thing. So I think it's important, at least writing for Paizo, I always try to remember, like, don't put Easter eggs in, like take the feel of it, like distill some of the vibes, the essence, and like the visuals of the thing, but don't try to be cheeky about referencing anything. Don't copy plot lines, like don't copy characters exactly and then change their name and change like one feature, you know, because that's when you're getting into that territory. And players can do that for themselves in their games if they figure out what it is you're referencing, like Mechageddon, for instance, you know, I'm going to talk about that, is an adventure path that has, it has a lot of inspiration from a lot of like anime and movies that deal with like in the mecha genre, but it isn't exactly like one story from any specific show or book or movie that you could pick out. It's like, it's got elements of each, but it also is telling its own story. So I'm sure that people out there are playing that as like specific Evangelion characters and Darling in the Franxx characters right now, or they're OCs, but you know what? That's fine. They can do that. Paizo is not going to do that though.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, in my home games, I've made like so many Batman references, right?
Oh, me too.
And that doesn't go to print. That's fine.
No,
but I just can't bring that to work with me. Cool. Well, speaking of visuals to like, you know, that we pull upon and all that stuff, I think it's time to show people some monsters. Jenny, do you want to show people a little bit about what they might see in Alien Core?
Yeah. So with all of this,
cover.
Oh yeah, so here is an amazing cover that Kent Hamilton did for us. This is definitely evoking some classic video game vibes, if you know what I'm talking about here. But we've got this badass Chain Devil, Chain Demon, actually, that one's a demon. And they're choking out some other monsters that are in this book as well. These are these void creatures, Akata. They're also a classic Starfinder first edition creature. And you can kind of see them here in the background. There is another element to this photo or to this image, which is we've got some spectra, which are our drift outsiders. So sort of our angels of hyperspace hanging out there in the background. And those are all creatures that you'll find in this book. And again, because we have this awesome compatibility now between Pathfinder and Starfinder, you Pathfinder GMs can use any of these aliens in your games. You can crash a starship back into Galarian or into your home planet. You know, bring them in from the future, whatever you want to do. So yeah, I think we have a few more to talk about as well. Alien Core includes classic creatures like the ones you saw on the cover, as well as void palms. I think we have the art. Yeah, those are pretty weird looking. This peacock looking space plant. Speaking of oozes, these aren't oozes, but they do have gravitic powers. So they are weird plants that can manipulate gravity. You also see Garaka calls, which are a classic monster that can phase through the hull of your ship out in space and leech and drain the life of the crew. Pretty creepy. Pretty creepy stuff. But we also have some brand new creatures because we know that you don't want to just see what you've seen before. So I've got a couple cool ones here. Here is, what if we had an outsider that was just a gun? So we have the canon Archon, the Arksheth right here on the left, art by Mark Molnar. This thing is kind of like the gun of the gods, so to speak, but it can also be wielded as a weapon by someone who is worthy, a worthy mortal. So that's pretty neat. We've also got here the Wayward Warp. So you know that Witch Warpers are a class in Starfinder, but if a player can do it, I believe that the GM can do it too. So these are living dimensional rifts that are kind of like personified versions of Witch Warper's quantum fields. So these are weird fields of somewhat randomized effects that can pop up when Witch Warpy type of magic happens. They can definitely get in your way. And don't worry though, Alien Core also has some NPCs in it for you. We've got some classics. You're going to see some Aeon Guards, Aslanti Star Empire Troopers. You might recognize them in their green iconic armor, but you see this one is kind of a purpley blue, and that's because this is a Sahedron Guard, a new type of elite Aslanti unit that actually serves the current Chancellor of the Throne, Ishmarayo Fear, who was taken over after the twin imperators. One was assassinated and the other was exiled. So lots of shakeup going on in that empire. You've got lots of different options for space troopers to have your party fight against. They've also got this head here. I love this art. This is a Corpse Fleet recruiter. I can just imagine her. Like, I just feel like they have like a little cell phone and they're just like calling. They're like, all right, I'm gonna meet my quota, everybody, because that is what this person is doing, or this undead person is going around and controlling mindless undead and forcing them to fight for the Corpse Fleet. So one of these in the room full of those skeletons we talked about before could be pretty nasty. Wow, chat. Wow. You know what? You can do whatever you want to do. It's your game. And then we do have a couple of other cool little NPCs to show off to. It's space. We've got to have our robots in the future in space. So I've got this cute little tax class civil robot. So this little guy right here can be placated by offering them credits.
Me too.
He's right. I know, right? Yeah, he's so real for that. But also, he has an ability called repossession, and I just wanted to share that as a little spoiler. It's fun. So pay your bills, pay your taxes, or the little repo bot's gonna come get you.
But if I don't pay my bills and taxes, then the little repo bot comes by and visits me.
It's true, and then you see the little robot. So I guess it's up to you. Like, I sometimes do seek out specific places so I can see the robots at the sushi restaurant. So I get it. Like, I don't know. Maybe it's not the best incentive to pay your taxes. So last but not least, I see folks in chat noticing this gorgeous art we have here of the Obrinchi, which is a new fae. We've got, I know there's some super cool fae coming out on the Pathfinder side, but we also have some new fae. We have some new solar nymphs. We have Hespers coming back, which are a classic radiation fae. But we also have these. These are sort of a fae. They're not really psychopomps, but they fill that role. They try to bring souls back to the first world so that Pharasma can't take them, and they can keep hold of what they feel like those gods forsook long ago, and they don't deserve it. So they go out and try to collect fae souls to bring them safely back to the first world. And they have also, they're connected to the stars. They have some Solarian-like abilities, like some kind of a shooting star dash where they can close distance quickly, and this big hammer that they can whack people with who aren't being nice to the fae souls.
Should have been nice.
So yeah, those are my previews. There's plenty more though. I don't want to give too many spoilers.
Sure.
But there's a lot of cool stuff in Alien Core, and you could use it in your Pathfinder game too.
Little
Definitely.
guys with big weapons is one of my favorite tropes. I love it so much.
Me too.
Oh man. Yeah, I'm very excited to I'm running a Sky King's Tomb game, and who knows? Maybe there's some aliens that got dug up ages ago that no one realized were hanging out when the time comes to grab my copy of Alien Core. Hey, we have some monsters too on the Pathfinder side that we'd like to show off. Let's talk about Monster Core 2, a book that technically we've announced. It wasn't part of the keynote, but look, here it is. If you didn't know, hey, we're doing Monster Core
Surprise!
again. Monster Core 2 with another lovely cover by Wayne Reynolds. Josh and I kind of tag teamed leading this book and getting to give people a lot of new monsters, much with like Monster Core 1. We took a lot of classics and opportunities for new monsters, chances to get remasters and stuff, and put them in this book. It's just, if you know Bestiary 1 and Bestiary 2 and Bestiary 3, you'll see monsters from all over there. But I said the word classic monsters, so here we are. Hey, let's jump in on this. Hey, Josh, what are some of these monsters we're looking at?
Oh,
Yeah, what are they called?
I don't think anyone will recognize the one on the left there. It's
No.
See, this is just a normal bed. Feel free to take a rest on it. It won't hurt you. We are bringing back the Mimic. It's very exciting to finally have this monster back in our core lineup for monsters. And it has a nice new fresh coat of paint, and it is ready to swallow you whole.
Yeah. The Mimic is no longer sticky, but instead has other new abilities that can take advantage of the fact that it is looking like whatever you least expect. So I'm excited for that. Yeah, and Swallow Hole is among its abilities. Mimics are great. We love them. We missed them, so we had to bring them back. We just, needed to take the time for that paint to dry so they weren't sticky anymore. And over here on the right, we have another classic monster pulling from folklore. This is a golem. You've heard the term golem before, but we had Avi Kul, who drew from Jewish folklore, to give us a golem from folklore that, a lot of constructs have taken their name from, but this one is divine in connection and has all of that inspiration into it. So we're giving you the classic golem finally. So people who have missed the golem and are wondering, what are you going to do with that Paizo golem logo? He's one of these guys. This is him. He's a golem. He's back. So yeah, we're excited to update a lot of monsters and have a chance to remaster them. We're also getting a chance to pull monsters from first edition, bring them forward to second edition, some for the very first time. I'm going to talk about here the one on the right. This is a deep one. This is a deep one. Sorry. There's also a deep one elder and a deep one hybrid entry for this book, but we're bringing back the deep ones, and these are cool little aquatic fellas that like just hanging out near the water, and definitely don't get up into they definitely don't get up into any evil shenanigans regarding any outer gods or elder gods or anything like that. Not elder gods, just outer gods, great old ones and stuff. Josh, I bet you can tell us quite a bit about our other friend here.
Oh boy, this is such a friendly little guy here on the left. He's never caused anybody no trouble ever. Definitely not a trickster fae who specializes in illusions and pranks. Not him. No, that's the Larabi. They love having a good time. And sometimes, it comes at the expense of others, but that's not their problem. They're the ones gullible enough to fall off a cliff that they can't see. Who's to say who's at blame there?
Not the Fae. Fae will never take any responsibility for anything they do.
Never, ever.
never. But yeah, we're updating monsters. We're bringing old classics. We're bringing 1E monsters. But of course, there's always space for brand new monsters here, which one is kind of an update of a thing. But we are adding a new Algolthu, a couple of Algolthu to the ranks here. And this Algolthu here in particular is I'm gonna hold off on its name, mostly because I don't remember the name off the top of my head, and Algolthu names are difficult.
They're pretty weird.
But its role is as a chronicler. It's holding this crystal in one of its various arms, and this crystal is a crystallized version of a memory that is plucked from someone's brain, What these Algolthu do is get into your brain, steal memories, and then pass these memories on to all other Algolthu to get them up to date on stuff. And they hold on to vast libraries, some of them with great, long, ancient Algolthu secrets. There's a claim that maybe one of the crystals that Algolthu pass around across all of Galarian, so no one of them holds onto it for too long, is the secret of how Eridan died. Whether or not that's true, we'll see. But that's a couple of some of the interesting things it can do. Very good at infiltration and being sneaky and stuff like that. So we're giving you more Algolthu to up your conspiracy game at your table.
They need that memory more than you do.
Okay? It's true. You won't even remember you miss it.
Yeah, exactly.
Josh, you know who this other fellow is?
Yeah. So undead creatures, you bring them back with some necromancy magic. We've seen all that before. But I think it's just a little bit more interesting when 1,000 little insects take over a corpse and brings you back from the life. I think that can be a little bit more fun sometimes. So these are what we are calling swarm striders. They are what happens when a billion little bugs take over a corpse and be like, ooh, how about you walk around a little bit and do some more stuff?
That's creepy. I love it.
I personally miss the worm that walks, and we have parted ways with worm that walks. He moved to another school, but we made new friends with the Swarm Striders. Swarm Striders are not specifically or exclusively to spellcasters. Anyone can become a Swarm Strider. We actually present a barbarian and a rogue and a cleric that is the Swarm Strider, and they can do different things, be made up by more than just worms. So whatever kind of swarm you want.
That's so cool.
Get excited for that. So lots of fun.
Excited for that. That's awesome. And you can do that in Starfinder now, y'all. Oh my god. Yeah. I got my new Starfinder character. Ooh, that's exciting.
For sure. But I think a lot of people were coming to this panel because of something I teased yesterday. So I think we should let them see some of the new dragons that are coming in this book.
Yes.
We're just going to ignore this here on the left side of my screen. Josh, tell me about the cool dragon that you had a chance to hand in
obviously,
crafting.
That's the only thing anyone's looking at right now. There's nothing else there but that magnificent rune dragon on the right. Oh, look at that. Each one of its scales is actually a rune stone that it can use to grant runes if you earn the favor of the rune dragon. It has so cool. It's constantly shifting its runes on its body to evoke different elemental effects and gain different resistances. So the keen-eyed magic users have to keep an eye on what runes is shifting to learn what it needs to do to take down this dragon if you become the unfortunate enemy of the rune dragon.
Yeah. Rune dragons are great. They also can just throw runes out onto the battlefield and they explode and stuff.
Those runes go
that
boom.
Sounds fun.
And its breath weapon is just places a bunch of runes all over the place, if I remember right.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, just you'll get covered in runes and then you'll explode. So that's fun.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's it. Let's move on to the next. No, hold on. Wait a second. Who's that over here? Is that my brand new son, the Despair Dragon? Yes, that is the Despair Dragon. That is a young Despair Dragon. So this is they get bigger and freakier. Despair Dragon is one of the new occult dragons featured in this book, and like most occult dragons, Despair Dragons have this weird innate compulsion to do a given thing. Conspirator dragons had a compulsion to just plan and scheme and plot. Despair dragons have a compulsion to scare people. They feed on fear, right? Like they are sustained by fear in part. Like if you don't freak enough people out as a Despair dragon, you start to kind of waste away and potentially die. You have to do it as a Despair dragon.
No, baby.
Do you have to scare all the good people in town? No, not necessarily. You can go scare a tyrant or some other jerk or whatever, but you have to scare someone. And there's a couple of different ways you can do that, right? You have your frightening aura. You can cast fear and things like that. Or you can make use of your really, really long tongue that ends in a very strange bladder. I'm going to ask Rue to zoom us in again a little bit here and look at this tongue. It from a distance, that tongue does have kind of a humanoid silhouette to it, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Despair Dragon has this interesting ability where it can inflate the bladder at the end of its tongue to resemble a person or an animal, small or medium creature, right? It has to be an animal or humanoid. And then it uses its tongue. It sends its tongue up to like, I think something like 20 feet out, and then uses that to try to uh, basically get your attention and be like, hey, help me. I need help. I'm a little kid or whatever. And then draw you toward it. So then it can frighten you.
Oh boy.
It is fishing for people to frighten with that bladder, and then does even more interesting things with fear and all that, whatever. But I have been so excited about that tongue for a very long time. I mentioned in the Lost Omens panel yesterday, I asked Kent Hamilton, our concept artist who helped with all of these dragons. Kent, we love the conspirator dragon. He's so gross and ugly and icky. Can you one up yourself? And he gave us a monster, a dragon that I think is perfect to live among the ranks of the dragons of Dark Souls and the other Souls games. I love him so much. He's great. So look forward to dealing with the spare dragons in the future. That'll be a fun time. Or maybe don't look forward to it. Maybe instead seek out a rune dragon. And we have one last set of monsters here. Josh and I picked another set of favorites. We picked each a monster that we like. So, Josh, what can you tell me about this buddy on the right here?
Oh my goodness.
Well, everyone knows that 4 goblins are better than 1. And we just took all the best aspects of the goblins and nothing else, and we made yeah, this is, I believe, called a mob gob.
Gob mob.
Oh my god. That's amazing.
If I don't see one of those memes where it's like, which face are you today by the end of PaizoCon, I will be very
Yes. You will have failed us.
I'm currently I think I'm the bottom one. I'm here chilling. Yeah, they were these ones are great. It does everything you want a multi-headed monster to do, which is constantly bicker amongst themselves throughout a fight. I just thought this one was a good time. I thought it was a fun monster. This is the one that I would want to beat most. I think it'd be a fun experience.
Yeah, the when we were bringing back the Goblin Snake entry for the Monster Core 2, Andrew White, who wrote the entry, is like, "Hey, I have a lot of word count left. Can I make something up?" Like, go for it, man. And we got the God Mob Snake, and I'm very excited that we did. So yes, look forward to learning more about them in the future. And I picked here the Soul Rider. This is the Soul Rider spawner. One of my goals with Monster Core is looking at Monster Core 1 and Monster Core 2 together. Do you have at least one creature of every level for every summon spell? Can you summon an animal? Can you summon a celestial? Can you summon aberration or whatever? And I wanted to make sure that we covered every base at every level, at least with one creature. So hey, let's see what we can. And we came up with an idea for the Soul Rider, which is a weird, like, parasitic creature that kind of exists out in the great beyond. And as souls travel through the River of Souls, they kind of just latch on, Remora style. Actually, internally, we referred to it as the Soul Remora before we got the final name. And then they just kind of travel along with that soul. And then wherever that soul ends up in the afterlife, be it heaven or hell or whatever, it just hangs out there and then gains kind of the properties of that area. So there are Soul Riders just around. There are some Soul Riders that have become holy because of the celestial planes that they're in. Some are unholy, and now you can summon a level 1 Soul Rider whenever you're ready to go and need one. And they're cute, right? They're fun. They travel to the plains, and they're looking for a ride to somewhere fun. So give them a summon. Say, hey, buddy, help me out. I'm fighting this God Mob Snake, and I need your help. So that's a little bit about what to expect in Monster Core 2. Of course, there's going to be remastered versions of a lot of creatures from Bestiary 1, 2, and 3. A lot of new monsters, new dragons, of course. It's kind of a good mix, like you found in Monster Core 1. So I hope people look forward to that. That comes out, I think, in November alongside Draconic Codex. So with that, those two, and then Draconic Codex. You have all the dragons you want, all the monsters you want. Add an Alien Core just to mix things up.
Yeah.
Plenty of opportunities in the future.
November is Monster Month.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I think we have a bit of time to answer a few questions here. I'm going to pull up our nice little list. The question was Despair Dragon? Yes, you shouldn't have asked. Now you've seen it. Someone has asked, will Monster Core have any mythic monsters? We didn't have space for mythic monsters in Monster Core 2, just because we were trying to update as much as we can, get much as remastered. But I think we are keeping an eye out here and there for good opportunities for mythic monsters in the future. Here's a good question regarding design. Osiris1138 asks, how do we make sure our monster truly stands out against the hundreds, if not thousands, of other monsters that exist out there? I'm going to put Jenny on the spot for that.
No, I'm thinking about it. Yeah, so there's not really, I don't know if there's like a right or wrong way. I think if you follow the tips we already talked about, you know, kind of cutting it down to a few core abilities that really tell your monster's story and show how cool your monster is, that'll help. Following the advice that, you know, be careful with things that take away player action and incapacitate your players or slow your players down, because it can be super dramatic sometimes, but using it over and over again can be really frustrating for people playing with that monster. And I think at the end of the day, what's really going to stand out is not what just looks cool on the page, because that matters, but if it's fun to play at the table and if people sit down and play an encounter with that monster and remember it later, then I think that's what you're going for. Does anyone else have any like tips to add to that?
I think in the moment, just a very interesting ability, right, is something that jumps out at people, right? Players aren't going to remember the 800 monsters that they've encountered by reading all the books in the moment that they're playing. They're focusing on that one monster. So just do what you can to make that monster memorable in the moment. And if you're looking to publish, obviously good art will help you out with that. But for the most part, at your table, players are focused on what's going. Ideally, players are focused on what's going on at your table, and just make that 20 minutes or whatever that they're on screen, as it were, just as exciting as they can be or memorable as they can be. And that's all you really need, right? I don't think about the 80 other dragons I'm fighting when there's just the one Despair Dragon here. Right? Why would I?
Yeah, I think that fun weaknesses can really make an encounter stand out and be memorable, because then it feels like it makes the players feel like they have solved the mystery on how to defeat the monster, and they had to do something creative, like throw beans at an Oni or something to trigger its weakness. Stuff like that can really stand out because it empowers the players to solve the mystery of fighting the monster.
Sure. There's a couple of quick ones that I'm going to answer here real quick. Someone was asking, hey, what size was that Algolthu? I think that one's large. Can any insect or bug be a swarm for a swarm strider? Yes, there's a little sidebar that talks about like cockroaches and wasps and all this other stuff. Any more daemons? We are remastering some daemons in Monster Core 2. Any Velstrax? Hey, we're remastering some Velstrax for Monster Core 2. Look at that. And then someone asked, is that the Aztec Apocalypse skeleton on the Monster Core 2 cover? Yes, that is the Tsitsi Meadle. This is actually the first time I got to order a cover by Wayne Reynolds, so I indulged. I put in one of my favorite monsters, the Tsitsi Meadle. That's also a Scaduanar on the cover, because the void energy that's kind of associated with Tsitsi Meadles, and then just a bunch of dinosaurs for fun. None of these creatures are actually like really new. We tend to show off a new one, but I just had fun with it, and I think Wayne did as well for that. Here's a question. If each of you could adapt a creature from any piece of media, what would you adapt? I'm going to assume we don't get sued in this situation.
In this scenario.
So I'm going to answer first because I got to see the question and already had it through. I love the Gaping Dragon from Dark Souls 1. It is very gross. I guess I'm just into really gross things. Go look that up after this panel. And I don't know. I love him. He's gross. He's great. Josh, do you have one that comes to mind?
Um, not off the top of my head. Come back to me.
Okay, Jenny.
Okay, so there's, I don't know, off the top of my head, I just thought about in the movie Annihilation, there's
Oh,
this like creepy, there's a
bear?
lot of weird stuff in there, right? But there's this
Yeah.
like the bear, yeah, the bear. And there's this hybrid, I won't say too much more, but it's like this hybrid bear, and it like has a human scream for a voice, and it's really creepy. And it kind of goes with that despair dragon like lure type of thing, where you think that, oh, someone's screaming for help, and then it comes up and it's this hideous monster. So yeah, that would be really cool to do something like that.
Sure. All right, Josh, what do you got?
Okay. Yeah. I think what I'd want to do would be probably outside of the scale, something until we get those giant space creatures. But I the oh boy. Spoilers for people reading Gideon the Ninth.
No. Oh, I didn't even think about that. Oh my god. Can I change my
Yep.
answer? No. Anyway, go on. You got
The
this
resurrection
one.
beast, I think, would be pretty.
Oh yeah.
Which are giant corpses of planets that have died that go around chasing the people who've killed them.
And they have like what's cool is they have like little, well, I won't say much spoilers. I feel like we're getting into spoiler territory. I'm gonna stop.
Yeah.
I'm gonna stop. But it's cool. You should read also. Y'all should all read the Locked Tomb. And the Locked Tomb is possible in Starfinder because you can just take the Necromancer class that Josh designed, and you can put that right into space in August. So there you go. It's gonna be great.
What a brand synergy right there. Perfect.
Exactly.
Let's see. Gosh, I wish I remembered all the monsters in the book off the top of my head so I could answer some of these a little bit better. Someone is asking if dog-shaped archons are returning in some capacity, and unfortunately, I have to tell them, no, we can't do that. But if your archons at home, if your archons at home look like dogs, that's great, and I'm very happy for you, and I'm excited for you to play that in your game. What's your favorite new monster you've made in these books? Well, I mean, I showed off the spirit dragon. I mean, I didn't design that dragon, but I put the concept forward when we did this book outline. It said, "Hey, author, this is what the despair dragon does." I think it was Katina Davis that wrote the despair dragon. This is what it does. Please have fun with that, and she definitely did. Jenny, do you have a favorite new alien that we wouldn't have art for it, but one that you can tease?
Yeah, I really like, so I wrote one called, we were calling it the Propaganda Angel as just kind of like a working name. That one's fun. But what I really am the most excited about is I got to write some stuff for Algolthus, and specifically, so I wrote some new Algolthus for Starfinder because they are obviously another branch of them has evolved and is alive and well in the future, obviously. And they now, however, they like to use nanites. They have like kind of a nanites integrated into their mucus, and they also really like to control biotech war shells rather than controlling living creatures with minds, because they just found that's really messy, and they're better than that anyway. So that was really fun to get to make some new Algolthus, and also to get to help develop something that actually Michael Bramnick wrote for the remote war machines of all types, but they are connected to those very creepy Algolthu lore. So if you do like that, check that out in Alien Core too. Might give you ideas for your Pathfinder game.
She said Alien Core also, not Alien Core 2. This is not a
Alien Core TOO. Yeah, don't worry. Oh my gosh, we don't even have one out yet, Luis. No, an Alien Core as well.
As well, Josh.
Thank you.
Give us one last tease for a new monster.
It is always such an opportunity when you get to work on a dragon, and the Rune Dragon is my favorite. Which was just fantastic to work on, and then also get the opportunity to expand further in the Draconic Codex, which was just an amazing opportunity. It was so much fun to write. I think is going to be one of my personal favorite dragons to interact with. Just based off of some of its quirks and its personality, which you can read all about in both Monster Core 2 and Draconic Codex. It's just I think it's It's a great dragon.
They're all great dragons. We love them all.
They're good
You love the
dragons.
dragons. You gotta love the dragons.
I joke about keeping a picture of all of the Monster Core dragons in my wallet and showing them off like my grandkids. So, yeah. Well, I think that is all the time we have today, and I think this is it. This is our last kind of Paizo staff panel for PaizoCon. So I guess we'll take this moment to say thank you everyone for joining us for this panel and for the whole weekend. I hope you had a great time here. And I guess I'll ask real quick, Jenny, do you have anywhere people can follow you around the internet?
You can check me out. I rarely post, but I am on Blue Sky, Mecha Space Witch. So check me out there. I'm also around on Paizo.com forums occasionally, as well as Starfinder and Pathfinder 2 Discords.
Great. How about you, Josh?
A similar boat. I technically have a Blue Sky that I might check once a week if you're lucky. That'd be at InProfit, IMPROPHET. With all the other Blue Sky things at the end.
Great. Awesome. And I'm Luis Loza. You can go to luisloza.com for links for whatever I'm up to at the time. But thank you, everyone, for joining us. We hope you have a good time with the last little bit of your PaizoCon today. Thanks. Bye-bye.